When people ask me what it's like to have won $342 million in the Powerball, I always start by telling them about the day I almost lost my mother. Because it was in that moment of absolute desperation, when I was willing to do anything to save her, that my life took a turn I never imagined possible. This is my story. It's not about the money itself, but about how I discovered who was really on my side when everything changed. Before I start the story, please subscribe to the channel and comment below which city and country you're watching from. My name is Scarlett Pembroke, I'm 34 years old, and until 2 years ago I was just another night shift nurse at Riverside General Hospital in Cedar Falls, Oregon. I lived in a one-bedroom apartment that I shared with my mother, Evelyn, a 68-year-old woman who had dedicated her entire life to raising me alone after my father abandoned us when I was only 7 years old. Mom was always my anchor, my best friend, my reason for existing. She worked as a cleaner at 3 different jobs throughout my adolescence to give me an education, even though it meant she could never finish high school herself. When I graduated from nursing school at Portland State University, it was the proudest day of her life. I remember how she cried when she first saw me in my white coat. For years, we lived in a comfortable routine. I worked from 11 at night to 7 in the morning at the hospital, mainly caring for patients in critical condition. It was heavy work, emotionally draining, but I loved making a difference in people's lives during their most vulnerable moments. My salary of $42,000 annually wasn't much, but we managed to pay the bills, take some small trips to the coast on my days off, and even save a little bit every month. Everything started falling apart on a cold November morning. I had just gotten home from my shift when I found Mom collapsed on the kitchen floor, unconscious. My medical training kicked in immediately. I checked her vital signs, put her in the recovery position, and called 911. During the 15 minutes it took for the ambulance to arrive, which felt like 15 hours, I held her hand and whispered prayers I hadn't said since childhood. At Riverside General, ironically the same hospital where I worked, the doctors ran a battery of tests. The diagnosis hit like a punch to the stomach: complex brain aneurysm, located in an extremely delicate area. The neurosurgeon, Dr. Amanda Chen, a brilliant woman I admired professionally, was direct with me. "Scarlett, I need to be honest. This type of aneurysm requires extremely complex surgery. We have 2 options: conventional surgery that would be covered by your mother's insurance, but with only 40% chance of success and high risk of permanent complications, or experimental robotic surgery with laser microsurgery, which would increase the chances to 85%, but costs $270,000 and isn't covered by any plan." $270,000. The number echoed in my head like a nightmare. In my entire life, I had never even seen that amount together. My savings account had exactly $4,300, the result of 5 years of religious saving. "How much time do we have?" I asked, feeling my voice tremble. "At most 6 weeks. The aneurysm is growing. If we don't operate by the end of December, it could rupture at any moment." And then, she didn't need to finish the sentence. That night, sitting beside Mom's bed in the ICU, watching her breathe with the help of machines, I made a decision that would change everything. No matter what I had to do, I would get that money. Mom had sacrificed her entire life for me. Now it was my turn to sacrifice everything for her. I started selling everything I owned that had any value. My 2007 car, $15,000. My grandmother's engagement ring, the only family jewelry, $3,500. Furniture, appliances, even my designer clothes I had bought over the years. In 2 weeks, I managed to gather $28,000. It was a start, but I was still far from what I needed. That's when my best friend, or at least who I thought was my best friend, showed her true face. Tessa Morrison and I had been friends since nursing school. We worked at the same hospital, same shifts, shared secrets, dreams, fears. When I told her about Mom's situation, I expected support, understanding. Maybe even help organizing a fundraiser among colleagues. Scarlett. Honey, she said one afternoon while we were having coffee in the hospital cafeteria. Maybe it's time to accept that some things are beyond our control. Your mother has already lived a long life. She's 68 years old, Tessa. That's not old. But $270,000. That's a lot of money. You'll be in debt for the rest of your life. And what if it doesn't work anyway? In that moment, looking into the eyes of the person I considered my heart sister, I noticed something that chilled me inside: relief. She was relieved that it wasn't happening to her. She was even somewhat satisfied that my perfect life, as she always said with disguised envy, was falling apart. From that day on, our friendship was never the same. She started avoiding me, making sarcastic comments about my family drama to other colleagues, as if my pain were some kind of act to get attention. The weeks passed and desperation only increased. I tried bank loans, denied for lack of sufficient collateral. I looked for medical charity organizations, all with waiting lists of months or years. I created a GoFundMe page that raised a measly $1,200 in 3 weeks. It was on a Thursday, December 12th, that my life changed forever. I was leaving the hospital after another exhausting shift when I passed by the corner convenience store where I always bought my breakfast coffee. Mr. Praksh, the Indian owner who knew all the hospital employees by name, noticed my condition. Miss Scarlett, you look like you've carried the world on your shoulders tonight, he said with his characteristic accent and that paternal smile that always comforted me. I told him about Mom. About the money, about how I was losing hope. He listened to me in silence, nodding with genuine compassion. My daughter, I come from a country where we believe strongly in the power of destiny. Sometimes, when we're in our darkest moment, the universe sends us signs. Today is Powerball drawing day. The prize is $342 million. Why don't you try? I laughed bitterly. Mr. Praksh, the chances are 1 in 300 million. I'm more likely to be struck by lightning. Maybe. But someone always wins, doesn't it? And you need a miracle. So why not you? I looked at the 5 crumpled dollars in my pocket, all I had left until my next paycheck. $5 I was saving for a lunch sandwich. For a moment that lasted an eternity, I stood there, weighing whether I would spend my last money on an impossible fantasy. All right, I finally whispered. 1 ticket. Random numbers. Mr. Praksh smiled as if he had just given me the best advice of my life. The machine spat out a small piece of paper with numbers I didn't even look at. 5, 12, 28, 34, 42, Powerball 23. Numbers that changed my life forever. I put the ticket in my wallet and didn't think about it for the next 2 days. I had more important things to worry about, like getting a second job to supplement income. Convincing the bank to give me at least a personal loan. Dealing with the fact that Mom was starting to have episodes of mental confusion because of the brain pressure. It was on Saturday night that my life turned upside down. I was at the hospital. In the middle of my shift, caring for a patient with pneumonia, when my colleague Jennifer came running to me with her phone in hand. Eyes wide with excitement. Scarlett! Scarlett! Did you see the Powerball numbers? Someone here in Cedar Falls won $342 million. My heart didn't even race. I was so emotionally exhausted that I couldn't even fully process what she was saying. Good for that person, I murmured, adjusting my patience for. At least someone in town is having luck. But Scarlett, the numbers. You need to check if you have a ticket. Everyone should check. Only then did I remember the crumpled piece of paper in my wallet. With trembling hands, more from exhaustion than expectation, I took the ticket and looked at the numbers. Jennifer was Reading from the lottery website. Point 5. My ticket had 5.12. My ticket had 12.28. My heart started beating faster. 34. My hands started really trembling now. 42. I could barely breathe. Powerball 23. The world stopped, literally stopped. The hospital sounds, the machines, the conversations, everything became a distant buzz. I looked at the ticket, then at Jennifer's phone, then back at the ticket. The numbers were there, exactly the same. Jennifer, my voice came out as a hoarse whisper, I think it's me. She looked at my ticket and stayed completely still for about 5 seconds before letting out a scream that must have been heard throughout the entire floor. Oh my God! Oh my God! Scarlett won the Powerball. The rest of that night was a blur. My supervisor had to dismiss me because I couldn't function anymore. Trembling uncontrollably, I drove to the hospital where Mom was admitted. Yes, still driving my neighbor's borrowed car because I had sold mine. I found her awake, lucid, reading a magazine. When she saw me enter the room with tears streaming down my face, she immediately became alarmed. What happened, my daughter? Are you okay? I sat in the chair beside her bed and, still trembling, showed her the lottery ticket. Mom, I won. I won the lottery. $342 million. She stared at me in silence for a long moment, then started laughing. Not a laugh of joy, but the laugh of someone who thinks their daughter has gone crazy from stress. My dear, you need to rest. The stress is making you, Mom, I'm serious. I grabbed my phone and showed her the Oregon Lottery website, the winning numbers, everything. I bought this ticket on Thursday when I left my shift. It's real, Mom. It's real. The moment she finally believed it was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. Her hands, already fragile from age and illness, covered her mouth while her tears began to fall. Not tears of joy only, but tears of deep relief, of a mother who realized her daughter wouldn't have to carry the weight of the world alone. The surgery. She whispered. The surgery will happen. The best surgery possible, with the best doctors, at the best hospital. And you're going to be fine, Mom. You're going to be fine. We hugged and cried together until the nurses came to remind us that visiting hours were over. In the following days, my life was completely transformed. First, I had to deal with all the bureaucracy of claiming the prize. I hired a lottery specialist lawyer, an accountant, a financial consultant. I chose to receive the full payment instead of installments. Even with taxes, it was over $200 million clean. The first thing I did was guarantee Mom's surgery. Not just the robotic surgery we needed, but I managed to have her transferred to the prestigious Oregon Health and Science University Hospital in Portland, where she would have access to the country's best neurosurgeons. Dr. Marcus Holloway, one of the pioneers in minimally invasive brain surgery, personally took on the case. The operation was scheduled for the first week of January. Finally, after weeks of nightmare, I could breathe, but it was then that I discovered a bitter truth about human nature: money doesn't change you. It reveals who people really are. My colleague Tessa, who had been so cold and calculating during my crisis, now appeared at my door every day with lame excuses about how she was worried about me and how our friendship was more important than any misunderstanding. She brought expensive gifts, talked about travel plans we could make together, even suggested I should invest in businesses that her husband's cousin was starting. Scarlett, you know we've always been like sisters, she said, holding my hand with forced intimacy that made me feel nauseous. I know I was a bit distant during those weeks, but it was because I was suffering along with you and didn't know how to help. It was a lie. I knew it, she knew it, everyone who witnessed our interaction during those days knew it. But she was betting that my natural generosity and my need for approval would make me forget how she had abandoned me in my darkest moment. Even worse was my family. Relatives I didn't even know existed started coming out of hiding like cockroaches when you turn on the light. Uncle Raymond, my father's brother, who had never lifted a finger to help us when I was a child and Mom worked 3 jobs, appeared at my door with a dramatic story about how he had always cared about us. But circumstances beyond his control had prevented him from keeping in touch. "Scarlett, my dear niece," he said with that honeyed voice that gave me chills. "You can't imagine how many times I thought about you too over the years. And now, seeing how God has blessed our family. Always ending up asking for loans for investments that would benefit all of us. My cousin Bethany, his daughter, who had completely ignored me throughout our youth and even laughed at me when I couldn't go to prom because we didn't have money for the dress, now wanted to be my best friend. She posted photos of us on Instagram, photos she practically forced me to take, with captions about family is everything and dear cousin. But what hurt me most was seeing how some close people completely changed their behavior toward me, but subtly, almost imperceptibly. Dr. Martinez, my supervisor at the hospital, who had always treated me as a competent but ordinary employee, now spoke to me with a strange difference, as if I were some kind of celebrity. "Scarlett, you don't need to work these heavy shifts anymore," he said. "Why don't you take an administrative position? Less stress, normal hours. Much more appropriate for someone in your situation." As if my lottery win had made me incapable of doing the job I loved. As if suddenly I was no longer worthy of caring for patients because I had money. The hardest part was realizing that many of these changes came from a genuine but misguided place. Colleagues who really liked me started treating me as if I were made of crystal, as if money had made me a completely different person who needed to be handled with extra care. "Are you still going to keep working?" was the question I heard at least 10 times a day. As if having money automatically meant I would lose my passion for caring for people, my need to feel useful, my professional identity that took years to build. The truth is that money was an absolute blessing. For the first time in my life, I could sleep at night without worrying about bills. I could buy organic food without looking at the price. I could help other people without compromising my own financial security. Money gave me freedom, opportunities, peace of mind, but it also showed me the ugliest side of people I loved. Mom's surgery happened on a cold January morning. Dr. Holloway and his team worked for 7 hours and 15 minutes to remove the aneurysm and reconstruct the damaged blood vessels. They were the longest hours of my life, even knowing she was in the best possible hands. When Dr. Holloway finally came out of the operating room with that tired but satisfied smile, I felt like I could fly. "The surgery was a complete success, Scarlett. We managed to remove the entire aneurysm without damage to surrounding tissues. Your mother will need a few weeks of recovery. But the expectation is that she'll return to normal completely." I cried so much that day I thought I had no more tears in my body during Mom's recovery weeks. I made some important decisions about my new financial reality. I hired a serious wealth management company. Not the adventurers who appeared at my door every day with unmissable opportunities. I invested conservatively: government bonds, real estate, some stocks from solid companies. Nothing risky, nothing that could compromise our future security. I bought a beautiful house in West Hills, a quiet residential neighborhood in Portland, with mountain views. Nothing too extravagant: 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a dream kitchen, and a garden where Mom could plant her favorite flowers when she recovered. It was a palace compared to our 1-bedroom apartment, but still a family home, not an ostentatious mansion. I also established a charity fund to help other families in the same situation we lived through. Evelyn Pembroke Fund for Medical Emergencies in honor of my mother. Every month, I allocated $50,000 to help people who needed expensive surgeries not covered by health plans. It was my way of giving back to the universe for the blessing I received, but it was during this period that the real family conflicts began. My Uncle Raymond, not satisfied with the polite but firm nose I had been giving to his investment requests, started getting aggressive. One afternoon, he showed up at my new house unannounced, with Bethany in tow, both clearly agitated. "You think you're better than us now, is that it?" he shouted in my entrance hall, his face red with anger. "You and your mother were always too proud, thinking you were special. But don't forget where you came from, girl. Don't forget that you're the daughter of a man who abandoned his own family." Those words hit me like stabs. He knew exactly where it hurt most. "Uncle Raymond, please, calm down. I don't think I'm better than anyone. I simply can't invest in all the businesses." Bethany interrupted, her voice full of venom. "You didn't even listen to our proposal properly. You're so busy playing saint, donating money to strangers, that you don't care about your own family. I offered help to you. I offered to pay Bethany's credit card debts, your house mortgage. But you wanted more. $15,000? Uncle Raymond laughed bitterly. You have $200 million and offer $15,000 to your family? That's charity, Scarlett. It's an insult. I realized in that moment that no matter how much I gave, it would never be enough. They didn't see an act of generosity, they saw a missed opportunity. They didn't see a niece trying to help, they saw an inexhaustible source of money that was being stingy. The situation worsened when they started spreading stories around town. According to Uncle Raymond, I had forgotten my roots and become a cold and calculating person. Bethany posted indirect messages on social media about people who get money and forget about family. The most painful was when some of my hospital colleagues started believing these stories. People who had known me for years, who knew my character, started looking at me with suspicion, as if I really had become a terrible person overnight. Tessa took advantage of the situation to intensify her manipulation campaign. She started organizing girls' meetings to which I wasn't invited, but which she talked about purposefully in my presence. "Oh, our get-together yesterday was so fun. I missed you, Scarlett, but I imagined you'd be busy with, I don't know, millionaire things," she said with a sweet smile that fooled no one. When I tried to confront her about this behavior, she played victim. "Wow, Scarlett, you're very sensitive lately. Could it be the stress of having so much money? It must be really difficult, I can't even imagine." It was on one of those occasions, after a particularly difficult shift where I lost a patient, a 43-year-old man who arrived with a heart attack, that I finally broke. Tessa had made another of her venomous comments. Something about how I should hire someone to do my work since I can afford it. I had just come out of 2 hours trying to resuscitate a family father, was emotionally destroyed, and couldn't take it anymore. "Enough, Tessa," I shouted in the middle of the hospital corridor, with several colleagues watching. "Enough of your envy disguised as concern. You didn't call even once when my mother was dying, but now that I have money you won't leave me alone." "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, but for the first time, her mask slipped a little. "I'm just worried because you changed." "I didn't change. You changed. You who started treating me as if I were a walking bank, as if my value as a person now depended on my bank balance." The silence that followed was embarrassing. But it was also liberating. I had finally said out loud what I had been feeling for months. In the following days, some important things happened. First, some colleagues came to me privately to apologize. Jennifer, the same one who had helped me discover I had one, told me something I'll never forget. "Scarlett, I realize now that maybe we treated you differently, and I apologize. I think we were intimidated, we didn't know how to act. But you're still the same incredible person you always were. The same dedicated nurse, the same loyal friend. Money didn't change that. Second, and most importantly, Mom was discharged from the hospital. 2 months after surgery, she was completely recovered, with no complications, with an energy I hadn't seen in years. When I brought her home, our new home, and saw her exploring the garden, planning where to plant her roses, I knew that every second of drama and conflict had been worth it. Third, I made a decision that changed my perspective on everything. I continued working as a nurse, but reduced my workload and began specializing in patients without resources. I used my personal experience with the American healthcare system to help other families navigate expensive treatment options. I discovered that my wealth gave me a voice I had never had before. When I called hospitals or clinics asking about treatment options for my patients, people listened to me differently. I could use this influence for good. 6 months after winning the lottery, I threw a small party to celebrate Mom's complete recovery. I invited only the people who really cared about us, not those who appeared after the money. It was a small group, Jennifer and a few more genuine hospital colleagues. Our neighbor Donna Rosa, who had cared for Mom during my work hours for years without ever asking for anything in return. And surprisingly, Mr. Praksh from the convenience store, during the party. Mr. Praksh approached me in the garden. "Miss Scarlett, may I ask a personal question?" "Of course, Mr. Praksh." "Do you regret buying that ticket?" The question caught me by surprise. I thought for a long moment before answering. Not the ticket itself. I would never regret saving my mother. But sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if we had gotten the money another way. If I had won an inheritance from some unknown rich aunt, or if I had invented something revolutionary. Something that would make me deserve the money in people's eyes. He smiled with that wisdom that only people who have lived a long time can have. My daughter, in life, blessings come in many forms. Sometimes as a reward for hard work, sometimes as a character test, sometimes simply as gifts we don't deserve but need to accept with gratitude. The problem is never the blessing itself, but how people react to it. He was right. Money had been the greatest blessing of my life. Not just because it saved Mom, but because it showed me who was really on my side. It forced me to establish boundaries I never had the courage to establish before. It gave me the opportunity to help other people in ways I never could have helped before. Today, 2 years later, Mom and I live in a quiet and happy routine. She has a beautiful garden, participates in a knitting group for community ladies, and helps me manage the charity fund that has grown and already helped more than 200 families. I still work as a nurse 3 days a week. But now I'm also a speaker at health conferences, an advocate for reforms in the American medical system, and a mentor to young nurses. Tessa still works at the same hospital, but our friendship ended definitively. Curiously, she never bothered me again after that day in the corridor. I think she realized I had woken up to her game. Uncle Raymond and Bethany? I haven't spoken to them for more than a year. I heard through third parties that he lost his house because of gambling debts, ironically, lottery and scratch-off bets. Life has those ironies, but I also discovered wonderful people. Dr. Martinez. After he got over the initial shock of not knowing how to treat me, became a great ally in my efforts to reform medical care for low-income patients. Jennifer continues to be a true friend, and now we have a small but solid group of people who genuinely care about each other. The biggest lesson I learned is that money, by itself, is never the problem. The problem is how it reveals truths about relationships we'd rather not see. It forced me to confront the fact that some friendships were based on convenience. That some relatives only appear when they need something. That some people see kindness as weakness and generosity as opportunity, but it also showed me that there are genuinely good people in the world. People who are happy for your success without wanting a part of it. People who treat you the same way regardless of your bank balance. People who value your character more than your checking account. Mom always says we won the lottery twice, once with the drawn numbers, another discovering who really loves us. She's right. If there's one thing I'd like all people to understand is that money amplifies who you already are, it doesn't change who you are. If you're generous by nature, you'll be more generous. If you're selfish, you'll be more selfish. If you're grateful, you'll be more grateful. If you're envious, you'll be more envious. What money really gave me wasn't the ability to buy things, it was the freedom to be completely myself. I no longer need to accept disrespect out of fear of being alone. I no longer need to maintain toxic relationships out of financial necessity. I no longer need to diminish myself so others feel comfortable, and above all, it gave me the opportunity to give back to the world in ways I never could before. Each family we've managed to help through the fund. Each person who didn't have to choose between medical treatment and bankruptcy. Each child who can have their parents for a few more years. These are the real riches that money brought me. So yes, I was desperate when I bought that ticket. But I discovered that sometimes desperation takes us exactly where we need to be. If you liked this story, subscribe to the channel, like the video and comment. What would you do if you won the lottery?